Now to One Nation founder and leader Pauline Hanson in Queensland. Thanks for joining us, Pauline. Surely allowing people who have voluntarily joined the Islamic Caliphate under ISIS back into this country poses a security risk.
Of course it does, Chris. I'm really angry, disgusted. I don't have the words to explain how I feel about this, and I don't think I think any differently to millions of other Australians out there how they feel about this. I tell people I'm really concerned about their ideology, their belief, why they went over there. And we've allowed them back in, and it costs about $2 million per person to actually look after them for their security, national security, for the rest of their life. I've got to tell you, they won't be getting jobs. And then there are children on top of it. We are fools, absolutely fools. I wouldn't have them anywhere near this place. The government had to give passports to them. You know, why didn't they not give them passports? They say you can't displace them if they're Australian citizens. I haven't even been told, have they got dual citizenship? Could we, are they only Australian citizens? It is disgusting what's happening, and I can't stand their ideology, their belief. They hate Jews, they hate Christians, they hate our Western culture, and this is going to be impact on us in generations coming. I'll tell you another thing too. This is a win for these radicals in this country. To have these women brought back into Australia, it is a win for them, and it's a loss for Australia.
It's hard to disagree with any of that, because when you listen to the Australian Federal Police, clearly there are security concerns.
Some individuals will be arrested and charged. Some will face continued investigations when they arrive in Australia. And children who return in the cohort will be asked to undergo community integration programs.
So some charged, some watched by authorities, all this, of course, costing taxpayers a lot of money. The charges obviously relating to security concerns. Yeah. The children who are the victims in all this, innocent victims, we understand that. But, of course, all of their care and integration and perhaps even de-radicalisation will be at the burden of Australian taxpayers too.
Before we continue, do us a little favour by subscribing to the channel, because over 98% of you watching haven't subscribed. It costs you nothing, not even a penny, to join this channel. Have you subscribed? Thanks so much.
Of course there will be, Chris. And they've actually been working on the Silverwater detention centre or prison there to actually house them in that space. Even one of the fathers of one of these women said, don't bring her back to Australia. He didn't want his own daughter back in Australia. He understands. Not only these kids have been radicalised in these camps as well. You will never be able to trust these people. I don't care how many do-gooders are out there thinking they can change them and bring them back into society. You will never be able to do that with these people, because you will always be fearful of them. And I think that main Australians out there, if they're put in the educational system, will they ever trust them or believe them? Well, until we root out the evil of this Islamic ideology in this country, we're going to end up like Britain, Canada, Denmark, France, Germany, you name it.
Well, this is what worries me so greatly about this, because we're all concerned about humanitarian issues with people who are now stateless in Syria and the rest of it. But our greatest security threat in this country is Islamist extremism. We've had 15 Australians shot dead on Bondi Beach just in December. We need governments to tackle the extremists, and they're letting in 4 adults who were part of ISIS. Now, if you listen to ASIO, they're trying to assuage or reassure the public, but it just points to how concerning this is. Here's the ASIO Director General.
So our job is to identify and understand the risks to returning individuals. We have done that. We've provided it to our mates in the police force, and the government understands our assessed risk. I'm not concerned immediately by their return, but they will get our attention, as you'd expect.
They've assessed the risk, they've made assessments, they've passed it on. The police are arresting some people. Of course, ASIO also assessed the 2 men, one who was dead and one who is allegedly a gunman at Bondi, assessed them and didn't follow up on them as well. Yet we're all supposed to be relaxed and comfortable about this now.
You've got 18,000 people on ASIO watch list, and I don't know who those people are or for what reason they're on the watch list. The fact is we don't know who these people are, and actually they're under-resourced, ASIO, to actually track and keep an eye on these people. We've seen this happen around the world. What happens now? We're at 4% of Muslims in the country, about 1 million people. I'm not saying all Muslims are radicals, by no means, and please don't take me the wrong way. But we actually have to be mindful of where we bring these people in from and which countries. And we've seen this happen constantly all the time around the world. So once they get numbers here, then they empower themselves into local, state and federal governments. They take over suburbs. We have been inundated now with those ones that are breeding in the country. We're paying for them to have their kids here. We've actually got Sharia law. It's happening. Building of mosques. It just constantly goes on and on. And Australians sit back and say, oh, well, what's your problem? You know, there is a big problem. And if you don't open up your eyes to see what the hell is happening in our country and learn from other countries and the mistakes that they've made in welcoming these people, you're going to suffer the consequences in time to come. And that's what I've got to say about the matter, Chris.
Well, people will say you're too harsh. People will say you're too strong on this stuff. But my biggest problem is the government won't even talk about it. This is a real issue. It requires real attention. We have a government who will do nothing about it. They won't even mouth the words Islamist extremism. They're letting in hate preachers into this country until the media flags them and then they deport them. And now they're letting in the ISIS women and Lord knows what sort of beliefs they're bringing back into this country. We'll stay on it, Pauline, but I do need to move on to other things. I want to get on to the Farrer by-election, and I want to show you some footage from Liberal Senator James Paterson when he was campaigning in Albury today. You might not have seen this, but he got into a bit of argy-bargy with One Nation campaign staff. Have a look.
No, that's how low you've got.
Yeah, I don't think it's low, I think it's honest.
Yeah, you're shit scared.
Yeah.
Let it go, Alan. Absolute shit scared. Are you getting a video?
Yes, I am.
Video me, mate. You don't video me without my bloody knowledge,
What's your name, by the way? What's your name, mate?
You know what my name is.
Say it. Say it. What's your name?
No. I'll walk away.
That's assault.
You're a liar.
You have just committed an assault.
I had never assaulted anyone.
Yes, you did. You just grabbed my phone.
I grabbed your phone
because
because you don't have permission to video it.
It's a public place.
No, you're a lying, deceitful man.
That's an assault, mate.
You're a lying, deceitful man, and you're utilising it as a defamation.
Alan, you're responsible for your conduct, mate.
Don't lower yourself. I'm responsible for my conduct.
Yeah.
And what you've done is you've done yourself.
Good job, mate.
OK, I should just correct myself. I think I said One Nation campaign staff. I'm more likely, I don't know, but more likely campaign volunteer, I would have thought. But your response to that behaviour?
It was. We've actually spoken directly to David Farley with regards to this. He phoned up James Paterson to make sure he was OK. Yes, he was. He wasn't injured in any way. But we apologise to him for what happened, and we've said we'll make every assistance possible. If you want to undertake a police investigation, that will encourage our volunteers who witness it to make their statements.
Yeah, we've got a statement here from David Farley. He's the One Nation Farrer candidate. He says that he's referred to the incident involving his volunteer with the Liberal senator. He reaffirms his commitment to respectful behaviour and inclusive participation in democratic processes. He condemns in the strongest terms this aggression on the campaign trail, and he won't hesitate to act when made aware of bad behaviour. And yes, we'll cooperate fully if there's a police investigation. But the point is, the volunteer is readily identifiable, Pauline Hanson. Has he been expelled from the party or chastised in any way?
Chris, it's only just been brought to my attention only 10 minutes from coming on to your program, so that's when I was made aware of it. He was dismissed and sent home straight away, immediately. That's all I know of the circumstances at the moment. So anyway, I don't know even if he is a member of the party. He's a volunteer that's working there on the booth. We don't condone this sort of behaviour by no means, and, you know, people should be able to move freely about without any violence. And anyone, you know, of that behaviour, you know, no one likes it. It happens across all political parties, Chris. We've seen this before on polling booths. And so we don't condone that sort of behaviour.
All right, just quickly, I've got to get you on this potential shift to the lower house. It makes a lot of sense, of course. If your polling holds up, it's just taken a bit of a tick backwards in the last poll, but it's still very high. If you were to get a clutch of lower house seats, you'd want to be there where the action is rather than have that run by Barnaby Joyce while you're stuck up in the Senate. But it's a big risk for you. So you're not going to declare your hand, are you, until much closer to the time?
Chris, actually, I only just spoke to James Ashby the day that he said it on Sky that night, which I wasn't terribly impressed about anyway. I said I'll make the decision when I finally give it further thought and closer to the election. So anyway, I'm not going to give you an exclusive which seat I might decide to stand in, what my movements are, but it is in the mix, it is consideration. And yes, if we do happen to be, in with the coalition government or giving them supply and confidence, I'd like to be a part of it because it does happen in the lower house. And if Barnaby's there right beside me and he does contest the seat of New England again, we'd make a great team in the lower house.
That's going to be one to watch, Pauline. Feel free to drop the exclusive on here anytime you like rather than just exclusive argy-bargy. We'll have an exclusive story at some stage. Thanks for joining us.
Every now and then, a political interview lands that stops people mid-scroll. Not because of a tax announcement, not because of another fiery question time exchange, but because it touches on one of the toughest questions any government can face. How do you protect national security while also operating within Australia's laws and international obligations? That was the backdrop this week as One Nation leader Pauline Hanson was interviewed about reports concerning Australians returning from former conflict zones in Syria that had once been controlled by the terrorist group ISIS. Before we go any further, it's important to separate political opinion from established fact. Successive Australian governments, both Coalition and Labor, have dealt with the return of Australian citizens from overseas conflict zones on a case-by-case basis, based on advice from intelligence agencies, law enforcement and national security officials. Where there is evidence of criminal offences, prosecutions may occur. In other situations, authorities may use monitoring, control orders or other lawful measures, depending on individual circumstances. Against that backdrop, Hanson made her position very clear. She argued that Australia should take the toughest possible approach toward people returning from areas formerly controlled by ISIS and questioned whether such returns were in Australia's national interest. Those comments reflect One Nation's long-standing political position on border security and counter-terrorism. The interviewer then referred to statements from Australian authorities explaining that some returnees may face criminal investigations while others could remain under ongoing monitoring by security agencies. He also noted that children returning from conflict zones may require specialised support and community programs, recognising that each case presents different legal and humanitarian considerations. That shifted the conversation onto another issue: public confidence. For many Australians, the biggest question isn't simply whether someone returns. It's what happens after they return. Who assesses the risks? Who monitors them? What safeguards are actually in place? Those are questions governments have been asked repeatedly over recent years. Australian officials have consistently said that national security agencies conduct detailed assessments before and after any return takes place. Those assessments involve organisations including ASIO, the Australian Federal Police, and other relevant agencies, depending on the circumstances. Hanson questioned whether those safeguards provide sufficient reassurance to the public. She argued that governments should place greater emphasis on preventing future security risks and called for a tougher overall approach. The interviewer then played comments from the Director General of ASIO, who explained that Australia's intelligence agencies assess returning individuals, provide advice to law enforcement, and continue monitoring where necessary. His message was that Australia's security agencies understand the risks and manage them using the powers available under Australian law. That exchange highlighted one of the biggest challenges facing democratic governments. National security decisions are rarely simple. Governments must balance intelligence advice, criminal law, citizenship, international obligations, and public safety, often without being able to disclose operational details publicly. Outside Parliament, the debate quickly spread beyond politics. Some Australians argued governments should provide more information about how these decisions are made to strengthen public confidence. Others argued that security agencies should be trusted to make professional risk assessments based on classified intelligence rather than political pressure. Meanwhile, experts in national security continued pointing out that each returnee's circumstances differ and that Australian law requires decisions to be based on evidence rather than assumptions. Back in the interview, however, the focus remained firmly on public confidence. And it was becoming increasingly clear that this conversation was about much more than one individual case. It had become part of a wider debate about national security, border policy, and how Australia responds to complex international events in an increasingly uncertain world. And as the interview continued, those questions only became more difficult. As the interview moved into its final stretch, the discussion widened beyond the original reports and into a broader question facing every Australian government. How do you reassure the public while also protecting the integrity of national security operations? It's a balancing act that's never straightforward. On one hand, Australians expect governments to be transparent wherever possible. On the other, intelligence agencies often argue that revealing too much about operational decisions could undermine ongoing investigations or future security work. That's where the political debate becomes especially intense. Hanson maintained that Australians deserve stronger assurances that every available legal measure is being used to minimise potential security risks. Those comments reflect her party's long-standing position on border security and counter-terrorism. The interviewer, meanwhile, noted that Australia's intelligence and law enforcement agencies have repeatedly said they assess individuals based on available evidence and continue monitoring where appropriate under Australian law. That distinction is important. Political leaders debate what policies should be. Security agencies implement the law as it exists. Those are related, but separate, roles. Outside the studio, reactions continued to emerge. Some commentators argued governments should provide clearer explanations of how these decisions are made so the public better understands the safeguards in place. Others cautioned that national security decisions are rarely suited to simple slogans, pointing out that every case involves different legal, evidentiary, and operational considerations. The conversation then shifted briefly to another issue making headlines during the campaign, a confrontation involving a campaign volunteer and a Liberal senator at a polling location. Hanson said she had only recently been informed of the incident before the interview began. She stated that the behaviour was not condoned, said the volunteer had been removed from campaign duties, and indicated that the party would cooperate with any police investigation if required. The interviewer noted that political campaigning can become heated, but emphasised that disagreements should never escalate into physical confrontations. It served as a reminder that while political contests are often passionate, democratic participation depends on respectful conduct from everyone involved, candidates, volunteers and voters alike. The interview then returned to the bigger political picture. Attention turned to One Nation's electoral prospects and speculation about whether Hanson might eventually seek a seat in the House of Representatives rather than remain in the Senate. Rather than making any firm commitment, Hanson said she had not reached a final decision and that any announcement would come closer to the next federal election. For political observers, it was another reminder that Australia's political landscape continues to evolve. Support for major parties has shifted over recent years. Minor parties and independents have become increasingly influential. And questions about national security, immigration, housing and the cost of living remain among the issues voters say matter most. Whether those concerns ultimately change election outcomes is something only time and voters will determine. One thing is clear, however. This week's interview became much more than a discussion about one news story. It developed into a wider conversation about national security, public confidence, government accountability, and the difficult decisions that democratic governments sometimes face. Those discussions are unlikely to disappear anytime soon. As international security challenges continue to evolve, Australians can expect these issues to remain part of political debate, both inside Parliament and across the wider community. So, what do you reckon? How should Australia balance national security, the rule of law and transparency when difficult decisions like these arise? Are current safeguards sufficient, or should governments explain these processes more clearly? Share your thoughts in the comments below, but please keep the discussion respectful. If you enjoyed this breakdown of one of the week's biggest political interviews, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update on Australian politics and current affairs. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.